In this video, I'm going to be showing you how I pick a color palette in general. So let's talk about acrylic paints. I have so many paints. I mean, it's years of accumulation. I'm also just a color freak. I see a color paint and I just want it, so I end up buying it. It's not a problem. It's not a problem because I'll never run out. Color is so inspiring to me. I mean, my paints just give me joy. So how can you put a price tag on that? How can you have too much joy? I guess it kind of seems like this is an episode of Confessions of a Hoarder, and I'm guilty as charged. The thing is, I don't feel guilty about it. Getting a grip on that many paints and organizing them so that I know what I have and I know where they are has really helped me be more effective and efficient and more joyful, really, because I'm using them all more often. I've organized my paints by color in these bins that stack and sit on a shelf in my art closet. Yes, you heard that right. I have an art closet because I don't have a dedicated art studio yet. I'm going to show you how I pick a pretty substantial or larger range of colors for a color palette. I'm such a big fan of color that I don't use the same color palette consistently. I have a lot of different paints and I like to use them. I like to use a lot of different colors and I like to switch it up. Sometimes I'll become partial or maybe enamored or maybe a little infatuated with a certain color palette and I'll stay with that for a little while. But it won't be long before I'm onto something else. I also like to choose a limited color palette for a particular project. So if I'm working in a small junk journal, I might use a limited palette for every single spread in that little journal. I can say that the one thing that has helped me readily access my paints in a much more efficient and joyful way is this paint swatch ring. I swatch just about every single paint, and I know that seems psycho, but the time it took me to do it, I know I've already saved in having this handy. The way I pick a palette is I usually just choose a color that I want to work with. Usually it's pink, and you can see me looking at the pinks, but I decided to go with orange. I'm going to switch it up. I pull the first card off the ring, and then I can hold it up against the other cards that I'm flipping through. So here I pick gray for my next color. Now I'm picking a color that would go with both of those colors, and so on. Usually it's a palette of 4 or 5 colors for a journal page, for example. And if I want to add additional colors to my journal pages, I could just add those when I add additional media, because it's always mixed media and it's always a lot of color. Once I've picked the cards and my color palette, I use the cards and the names of the paints on the cards to go pull the paints out of my stash. And I've numbered the cards on the back so that when I want to replace them, I know where they're supposed to go. Here's that larger, substantial color palette I was telling you about earlier. I've pulled the swatches off of my ring, and now I'm using the swatches and the names of the paints to pull the paints from my stash inside my art closet. This tray is mostly for demonstration purposes because as soon as I've got the paints pulled, I'm going to put them in a little basket so that I have easy access to them next to my work surface. And because this is a larger color palette, I'm just going to keep those swatches out, put them on a mini ring, and I'll use that ring of swatches to select smaller color palettes as I'm working. I'll use the mini swatch ring the same way I would use the big one. I pick a color and then I match some colors to it for a smaller color palette. Here's an example. I have my big pile of paints in my basket to the side of my work surface, and now all I have to do is use the swatches and the names and the colors to pull those paints from my basket.